When you picture an American soldier heading into battle during World War II, you probably imagine the obvious things. A rifle. A helmet. Ammunition. Maybe a few grenades. But look beyond the weapons, and you discover something far more interesting. Inside their pockets, packs and uniforms, American GIs carried an assortment of objects that helped them eat, survive, communicate, and sometimes simply remember who they were. Some were officially issued by the Army. Others came from home. And a few were personal possessions a soldier simply refused to leave behind. These objects tell us something weapons can't. They tell us about the human being carrying them. Here are 10 things American soldiers carried into battle that weren't weapons. And some of the smallest items could mean the most. 10. The canteen. Let's begin with something incredibly ordinary, but absolutely essential. Water. American soldiers commonly carried a canteen attached to their field equipment. It might not seem remarkable today, but imagine marching for hours under a burning sun, climbing through mountains, crossing muddy countryside, or spending days in a foxhole. That small container of water could suddenly become one of the most valuable things you owned. The canteen was commonly paired with a metal cup. That cup wasn't just for drinking. Soldiers could use it for coffee, soup, or whatever hot liquid they could get. A rifle might keep a soldier alive during combat. But without water, he wasn't going very far. 9. A first aid packet attached to a soldier's equipment was something he hoped he'd never need. A small first aid packet. Inside was an emergency dressing intended to help treat a wound until proper medical attention became available. It wasn't a miniature hospital. It wasn't designed to solve every injury. But on a battlefield where a medic might not immediately reach you, having basic first aid within arm's reach mattered enormously. And there was another grim reality. The packet you carried wasn't necessarily going to be used on you. In combat, the person beside you might need it first. 8. Food that could survive a battlefield. An army can't fight if it can't eat. American troops used several kinds of field rations during World War II. One of the most famous was the K ration. It was designed to be compact and portable, something a soldier could carry when normal kitchens couldn't follow him. Depending on the ration and period, soldiers might find biscuits, canned food, coffee powder, candy, chewing gum, and other small items inside. The food wasn't exactly fine dining. But when you've spent hours marching, digging, or fighting, priorities change. A piece of chocolate or a few crackers could suddenly feel like a feast. And sometimes soldiers stuffed pieces of their rations directly into their pockets so they could eat them later. 7. Cigarettes and matches. Today this might seem surprising. During World War II, cigarettes were deeply embedded in military life. They appeared in some ration packs and were distributed to troops in enormous quantities. Soldiers smoked while waiting. They smoked while talking. They smoked after terrifying experiences. And they traded cigarettes with one another. For many troops, smoking became part of the strange rhythm of wartime life. Long stretches of boredom, followed by moments of unimaginable intensity. A cigarette offered a few minutes when a soldier could sit down, talk to the man beside him, and temporarily pretend that life was normal. 6. Letters from home. Now we get to something that weighed almost nothing, but could be priceless. Letters. From mothers. Fathers. Wives. Girlfriends. Brothers. Sisters. Friends. For a young American thousands of miles from home, a piece of paper could become his connection to another world. A world where people went to work. Where families ate dinner together. Where nobody slept in a muddy hole wondering what tomorrow would bring. Soldiers sometimes carried letters with them long after reading them. They unfolded them again and again. Because sometimes what mattered wasn't the news inside. It was simply seeing handwriting from someone who was waiting for you to come home. 5. Photographs. Alongside those letters were photographs. A wife smiling at the camera. A girlfriend back home. Parents standing outside the family house. Children growing up while their father was thousands of miles away. Or simply friends from a life that suddenly seemed impossibly distant. Photographs were small enough to slip into a pocket or wallet. But emotionally, they could represent everything a soldier hoped to return to. Wartime observers described family snapshots among the personal belongings soldiers carried ashore during invasions. Think about that. A man could be surrounded by thousands of soldiers, and still carry one tiny photograph reminding him exactly why he wanted to survive. 4. Playing cards. War wasn't constant fighting. There was waiting. A lot of waiting. Waiting for orders. Waiting for transportation. Waiting for food. Waiting for darkness. Waiting for something to happen. And one of the simplest ways soldiers passed that time was with playing cards. A deck was small, portable, and didn't require electricity or complicated equipment. Anywhere soldiers could sit down, they could play. For a little while, the conversation might turn away from the war. Someone would joke. Someone would complain about losing. Someone would accuse somebody else of cheating. And for a few minutes, these weren't soldiers waiting for their next battle. They were simply young men playing cards. 3. A pocket Bible or religious item. For some American soldiers, faith became especially important during wartime. Small Bibles and other religious items could be carried in pockets or packs. Some soldiers prayed before battle. Others kept religious medals or other personal objects connected to their beliefs. Whether someone considered an item sacred, comforting, or simply a reminder of home, its psychological importance could be enormous. Because when you're facing something you cannot control, sometimes you hold on to whatever gives you hope. Among the abandoned belongings observed after the Normandy landings were pocket Bibles that had once belonged to individual soldiers. Small books carried into one of the largest invasions in history. 2. Shaving and hygiene items. This one might seem almost absurd. You're going into a war zone, and you're carrying a razor? But American soldiers also carried toiletries and compact shaving equipment. A toothbrush. Soap. A razor. Small grooming items. Why? Because armies still expected standards of hygiene and appearance when circumstances allowed. But there was something else. Imagine spending days covered in dirt, sweat, and mud. Then finally getting an opportunity to wash your face or shave. For a few minutes, you could look in a mirror and recognize yourself again. Sometimes maintaining ordinary routines was one way of preserving a tiny piece of normal life. 1. Personal lucky charms and unexpected objects. And finally, we reach the most personal category. The things soldiers chose for themselves. A lucky coin. A religious medal. A keepsake. A souvenir. Something given to them by someone they loved. Not every soldier carried the same personal objects, of course. That's precisely what makes them interesting. And occasionally soldiers brought possessions that seem almost unbelievable in a combat zone. After the Normandy invasion, war correspondent Ernie Pyle described the incredible variety of personal belongings scattered along the beach. There were diaries, letters, photographs, Bibles, writing paper, and among all that military equipment, even objects as unexpected as a banjo and a tennis racket. Imagine carrying a tennis racket into an invasion. It sounds ridiculous. But that's also the point. Armies may appear uniform from a distance. Same helmets. Same uniforms. Same equipment. But underneath all of it were individual people. And people carry strange things. Things that remind them of home. Things that make them comfortable. Things they believe bring them luck. And things that remind them of the life they intend to return to. Weapons dominate the photographs and movies we associate with World War II. But they tell only part of the story. Look closely at what American soldiers carried besides their weapons, and you begin to see the person underneath the uniform. Water because he was thirsty. Food because he was hungry. A first aid packet because he could be wounded. Cigarettes and playing cards to get through the waiting. A razor and toothbrush because he still wanted to feel human. And tucked somewhere safely away, a letter. A photograph. A Bible. Or some tiny object whose importance nobody else would ever understand. Millions of men went to war wearing similar uniforms. But inside their pockets were pieces of millions of different lives. And perhaps that's what makes these objects so fascinating today. They remind us that history isn't only about weapons, battles, and generals. Sometimes history can fit inside a soldier's pocket. If you could speak to an American GI from World War II, what one personal item would you most want to ask him about? Tell us in the comments. And subscribe to Weapons Vault for more stories about the soldiers, equipment, and forgotten details behind military history.